TFA fam, appreciate you rocking with us. Kev's Chiefs are on, so we're just going to jump right into the damn thing. I do want to say real quick that we have 4 teams on bye in Week 10: Baltimore, Cincy, New England, and the Jets. Kev, go ahead and kick us off with the Week 10 streaming options at quarterback.
Yeah, this isn't just a streaming option. This is a full-fledged, if he's out there, you should be adding him. And I would actually look to drop him for players like Matt Stafford, Geno Smith, Kirk Cousins, Trevor Lawrence, Derek Carr, all players that are rostered well more than what he is. Justin Fields is rostered in 46% of leagues. This week they get Detroit. He just had a monster game today, completed 17 of 28 passes for 123 yards and 3 touchdowns. He also ran 15 times for what is a single game NFL record for a quarterback, 178 rushing yards, and another score for 42 fantasy points today. Fields has been the overall QB1 over the past 3 weeks, and he has over 300 rushing yards with 9 total touchdowns over that span. This week, they get to play the Lions, who have been terrible against opposing quarterbacks. They allow the second most fantasy points and rank 32nd in pass DVOA. The Bears have the 9th easiest remaining schedule as well for quarterbacks. So I view Justin Fields as a top 8 fantasy quarterback rest of season. I think you could even make an argument for higher. I mean, what he's doing on the ground is what we see from like Lamar Jackson and stuff like that. And I think this offense could get even better passing once you continue to mix in Chase Claypool more and more involved in this offense with Darnell Mooney. Cole Kmet. This is kind of what we loved about Justin Fields, into the preseason. Why I thought he was a terrific late round quarterback, and he's starting to show it now. So Justin Fields, I think, is the real deal. And their upcoming schedule is a dream, too. Because I think even after this week, they get Atlanta. So, really good matchup here for Justin Fields. So, next up, we have Russell Wilson, who rostered in 54% of leagues are playing Tennessee this week, coming off their Week 9 bye. He's averaged about 242 passing yards on the year, but a really bad 2.6% touchdown rate. This is a possible matchup for them to turn around their season because, man, it's been pretty bad. But Russell Wilson looked a little bit better when they're over in London right before their bye. This week they'll face a Titans pass defense that ranks 15th in pass DVOA and allows the 10th most fantasy points to quarterbacks. I don't have high confidence in Russell Wilson, but with guys like Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson on bye, if some of these other quarterbacks are gone, I don't mind picking him up if he's available. And then I put next up, I have Jimmy G on here. They get the Chargers. The Chargers have been okay pass defense this year. Jimmy G, this really depends on game script here because this is a team that really wants to run the football. He's only rostered in 39% of leagues, but I think he's a serviceable streaming option this week. Somebody that you probably look at maybe getting like 15 to 18 fantasy points in this matchup. Deebo Samuel probably will be back. They'll have the full complement of their weapons. So Jimmy G, I think, makes for a pretty good play. Next up, you have Daniel Jones, rostered in 38% of leagues versus Houston. They're another team that's coming off their bye, faces the Texans, who rank 17th in pass DVOA and 32nd in rush DVOA. Daniel Jones, I think, is a decent option again. And another quarterback that's using his legs quite a bit, averaging almost 50 rushing yards a game. So Daniel Jones, I think, is another player you can look to add this week, mainly because of his rushing upside. The pass catchers just haven't really been there for them. Wan'Dale Robinson's a guy we'll talk about later, but him, Darius Slayton, maybe Kenny Golladay if he can get back here, but they don't have a ton in terms of that. But I still think Daniel Jones is a decent option against Houston. And then we have Andy Dalton. Steelers allow the 5th most fantasy points to quarterbacks, and they're ranked 26th in passive UA, so it should be a pretty good matchup here for them. Chris Olave, Jarvis Landry, if he's back. So I think they have enough pass catchers here, and Andy Dalton, I think, makes a little bit of sense. And then I put Deshaun Watson on here because he's eligible to return in 3 weeks. So if you're a team that's set up pretty nicely right now for the playoff run and you have a deep bench, I don't mind right now at this point adding Deshaun Watson, only rostered 27% of leagues. Like I said, he only has a few more weeks left and he should be back. So with an opening matchup against Houston as well. So Deshaun Watson, I think, is somebody that you could look to stash right about now.
That's actually kind of wild that he is rostered in 27% of leagues. That's much higher than I thought it was going to be. Let's go ahead and move on to the running backs for Week 10. There's no guys I consider here that are must-adds or guys that I'm blowing my fab for, using my top waiver priority for, anything like that. There are certainly some deeper options and some handcuff options that can be stashed as well. I do want to say really quickly, if guys like Jeff Wilson and Chuba Hubbard are out there, they're likely not there in 12-team leagues, but if for some reason they are sitting out there, I think they should be rostered. Jeff Wilson could be taking that lead role from Raheem Mostert already, and Chuba Hubbard was only rostered in, I think, like 30% of ESPN leagues. This is the first time we saw the Panthers really playing from behind since the CMC trade, and Hubbard ran just 12 of the 30 running back routes. So I'd expect Hubbard to take that over and to take some of the carries away from Foreman as well. So if he's out there, grab him. Deep option, Kylan Hill. So we obviously have to pay attention to what happens with Aaron Jones if he's forced to miss times. The last season in the 2 games that Aaron Jones missed, there was only one game where AJ Dillon was the guy, had 75% of the snaps in that game, and then in week 18 that dropped down to 54% with Patrick Taylor getting 46% of the snaps, and the opportunities were super close as well. Patrick Taylor saw 13 to AJ Dillon's 15. So I think with the week off here, or I guess the week of practice rather, if Kylan Hill were to if Aaron Jones, if Aaron Jones were to miss, I think Kylan Hill could be worked into the offense. Again, that's more of a deeper option. And then one that is interesting here that could potentially have some standalone value, heavily available rather, is Isaiah Spiller. After he was inactive for the first few weeks and then only played 4 snaps in week 7, that jumped up to a nearly 19% snap share for Isaiah Spiller this past week. More importantly, he outsnapped Sony Michel. So Joshua Kelly is on IR. Could be looking at the that RB2 role for the Chargers with Isaiah Spiller. And we know they don't want Eckler to be like this 80% opportunity type of back. So if Spiller can continue to be worked in, as being a rookie, missed a couple of weeks and all that, I think he is someone to definitely go out there and grab. And then beyond that, we're looking at just more or less handcuff type guys. Again, going to talk about Pacheco and McKinnon. Pacheco likely rostered in 12-team leagues, but McKinnon's still available in 90% of ESPN leagues. Going into this week, McKinnon actually led Kansas City in snap share among the running backs, rather. And he's been on the field the most in passing down situations as well. So McKinnon should still be out there. You can go and grab him. The Philly backfield, Kenneth Gainwell, Boston Scott. I prefer Gainwell. He's been more consistently involved. Only 2 games with a sub 25% snap share, where Boston Scott only has 2 games with over a 20% snap share. And Boston Scott only has 1 target on the entire year. Jalen Warren for the Steelers has been pretty efficient with his touches. He's 9th in yards per touch and 7th in yards created per touch heading into week 9. Najee has not been efficient. He has not been good. The Steelers are sitting at 2-6 on the season. I really don't think there's any reason for them to run Najee into the ground. So I think we could see Warren get a little bit more involved coming out of the bye. Dontrell Hilliard going tonight, getting some looks even with Derrick Henry on the field. We know he's looked good in spots going back to last year. I was very surprised to see that he is 11th in target share among running backs. Now, obviously, some of that has to do with the fact that Tennessee doesn't throw as much, but it was still interesting to see that nonetheless. JaMychal Hasty, he might be the handcuff that I want out of this group, because he is only one Travis Etienne injury away from having a big time role. They really don't want to seem to get the rookie Snoop Connor involved at all. Travis Etienne has obviously run away with that job. I thought Hasty was going to be a little bit more involved than he has been. That has not been the case. So if Etienne goes down, JaMychal Hasty is looking at an absolute workhorse role. Kyron Williams, obviously with Akers not being moved, that's going to muddy the backfield. But it's not like Akers or Henderson has looked particularly good. Henderson did look decent today. But if Williams can show anything at all, he could be the 1B back at worst. And then somebody like Jordan Wilkins, I forgot to throw him up here on the graphic, but this one is going to depend on Deion Jackson, what ends up happening with him. So we have to pay attention to that to see, if anything comes of that. Didn't play like in the last, I think, 14 minutes, I want to say, in that game. But at the very least, Wilkins looked like he was the preferred pass catching back. And obviously, this is going to depend on what happens with Jonathan Taylor as well. I can't remember who it was in the comments that mentioned, gave us the idea to start talking about guys that we could drop, which is a very good one. I would like to give you a shout out, but I can't remember who it was. But running backs you can look to drop would be guys like James Cook, Latavius Murray, Brian Robinson, and then Kev, I know you have some that we can talk about on the wide receivers as well.
Yeah, the first one I have on here is actually really surprised. It's George Pickens. Like I thought it was, I was like, that can't be right. Because on Yahoo they have only rostered in 55% of leagues. So I went over and jumped over to ESPN, and sure enough, he was only rostered in 58% of leagues over there. I don't get it at all. He's been productive this year, and I mean, just considering the fact that I know they were on bye, but just considering the fact that they just traded Chase Claypool, which really opens up a lot of targets for him. So I just put him on here. If George Pickens is available in any league you're in, you should add him. He should 100% be rostered in 100% of leagues. It should not be 55% of leagues. So I just wanted to put him on there. I'm sure in most leagues he's not available, but if he somehow is, he should definitely be rostered. And then Terrace Marshall, thank goodness, actually had a decent game today, whether it was in garbage time or not. It still paid off. Over the last two games, he's seen 15 targets, 3 receptions today, 6 targets, 53 yards, and a score for 14.3 fantasy points. Again, most of his production came in garbage time, but he's clearly the number 2 target in this offense. And had a pretty nice touchdown grab back in the end zone. Obviously, this team looked terrible today. Really, until the second half, Baker Mayfield came in and threw 2 touchdowns. But Terrace Marshall, I think, is definitely going to be a viable fantasy option moving forward. Not somebody that I'm expecting to be like some like wide receiver too, but I think he can at least be a flex option on with all these bye weeks going on. So I think Terrace Marshall is definitely in play. And then I put Odell Beckham on here. Jake Glazer reported today he's actually expected to be cleared to return this week. So I think he is definitely going to be somebody that to me, it's going to depend on where he lands, right? Like if he goes to like the Rams or I don't know, another team that a couple other teams that have been reported that aren't as exciting. I don't think that he is just like a smash pickup. But like if he were to go to a team like the Cowboys who have been reported interested in him, then he becomes like their wide receiver too. I think his value is going to come much more in like the fantasy playoff landscape. He's not going to be somebody you're going to immediately just going to plug into your lineup and be able to play every week. He's going to have to learn an offense unless he goes back to the Rams. And then there, if he goes there, it's a pretty crowded room with really an offense that's looked pretty bad so far this year. But I do think Odell Beckham is somebody that you can at least look to add. And then I put Wan'Dale Robinson on here. The Giants have the easiest remaining schedule for wide receivers, with upcoming matchups against the Texans, Lions, Cowboys, and the Commanders. So I do think Wan'Dale Robinson's kind of looks like the wide receiver one here in this offense. And so they're coming off their bye. So I do think Wan'Dale Robinson, only rostered in 25% of leagues, definitely should be much higher than that. And then the rest of these guys on here, you have DeAndre Carter, who caught five receptions on 6 targets for 53 yards today. This matchup or this with him, he was like fourth or fifth in targets just because you had a couple guys see 8 or 9 targets there. Josh Palmer had a really good day. Uh, Gerald Everett had a pretty solid day, but DeAndre Carter did see 6 targets. And then you also had Mike Bandy, who saw 8 targets today. Did not really do a whole lot with them, but I think DeAndre Carter, especially with all these wide receivers out, Mike Williams, Keenan Allen are probably going to be out at least for a few more weeks. I think DeAndre Carter has some appeal. And then Samori Torre, rostered in 0% of leagues. He caught 204 for 34 yards today. But the reason that he's on here is because this team is just absolutely getting destroyed by injuries right now. Romeo Dobbs left today in crutches. He left the game today. He looks like he's going to miss multiple weeks with an ankle injury. Christian Watson was knocked out again with a concussion. I have to imagine he's going to miss multiple weeks here for Christian Watson. So they just don't have anybody else to throw the ball to right now. They have no receivers. Sammy Watkins looks completely washed. Has no business even look like they should just cut him right now because Sammy Watkins is terrible and he has no business being out there on the field. But sorry, I had to say that, Cody. But Samori Torre, over the past 2 weeks, he's had some nice catches, and I think he could end up being like the number 2 or number 3 wide receiver of this offense right now. They just don't really have anybody else with all their injuries they have, and so yes, this offense doesn't look great right now, but somebody's got to go out there and run routes, and he did score a touchdown last week, so I think he can be somebody to look at, especially in deeper formats. And then Alec Pierce and Paris Campbell, which the only reason they're on here is because I can't imagine that this team is going to continue to run Sam Ehlinger out there at quarterback. He looks dreadful at quarterback right now. They cannot do nothing through the air. 80 yards passing today. Alec Pierce led the team in receiving yards on 1 catch for 23 yards, and that was it. And so Frank Reich said after the game, they're definitely going to be looking at the quarterback position. Whether it's Matt Ryan, if it's not, go to Nick Foles. Go to somebody else because it's not Sam Ehlinger. He is not very good, and he's just dreadful. And so it sounds like they might be making a change at quarterback, and maybe they're tanking and they're trying to like Luck 2.0, suck for Luck 2.0 here, trying to get their franchise quarterback through the draft. But go to Nick Foles then because Sam Ehlinger ain't it. But if they do make a change, that's why I think Alec Pierce and Paris Campbell are both guys that I think you can take a look at, because I think this offense has become much more functional. Whether they go back to Matt Ryan, whether they go to Nick Foles, I think this passing offense would take a pretty good bump. So I think both of those guys would be in play. And then from there, the other couple options we have on here, guys like Zay Jones, McCole Hardman, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, all those guys are players that I think you could at least plug and play through bye weeks. And then Donovan Peoples-Jones, another guy, again, with he's actually played pretty well. He hasn't scored a touchdown. That's kind of been the one thing that's holding him back. But he's now gone over 70 yards on 4 of his last 5 games receiving. And then with Deshaun Watson comes back, I think this dramatically improves his stock, because we know that Deshaun Watson is a good deep ball passer, and that is definitely something that fits Donovan Peoples-Jones' game. I think you can see him be more involved in the red zone as well as through the air. And so I honestly think really Donovan Peoples-Jones, if he's out there, I want him on my team before Deshaun Watson comes back, because I think this passing offense is in for a big bump. And then Nico Collins, I don't know what the hell is going on with Brandon Cooks. He doesn't seem like he really wants to be there right now. And obviously, and because he didn't get traded, he missed practice. He didn't play this past week. And I don't know what's going to happen with him. It doesn't seem like he really wants to be there right now. And I don't know what they're going to do with him. So I put Nico Collins out here. Nico Collins did miss this past week with an injury, but once he comes back, he could end up being the wide receiver 1 in this offense, depending on what happens with Brandon Cooks. And then I did put some potential drop guys on here. Rashad Bateman, I'm dropping him right now. He's he's going to be out for a while. I don't think that he's somebody that I'm going to be counting on the rest of the season. Unless you have a bunch of IR spots, I think you could absolutely drop Rashad Bateman. Romeo Dobbs for the same reason, because injuries. And then if you're in like a 10-team league or less, I think you can drop Brandon Cooks as well. I don't have a whole lot of high hopes for him. I know, if I'm in a deeper league, I'm probably going to hold on to him, because there's probably not a lot of better options out there than he is. But I just don't know what to expect from the situation. So if you want to drop him, I think you definitely can. And then Isaiah McKenzie, we're just holding on to hope here with him. I think he's going to be way too hard to trust. I don't think he's anybody that you have to have on your roster. So I think Isaiah McKenzie can be dropped. And same thing with Hunter Renfrow. I think he's going to have some weeks that he's viable. But again, this Raiders team is dreadful. And all they had today was Devontae Adams, who was targeted 17 times. Other than that, nobody did anything on that team. Derek Carr looks lost. It looks like they should probably move on from Derek Carr after this year. That's not going to happen, but that's what they probably should do. But regardless of that, I think all of those wide receivers, if you're looking to drop somebody, I think all of them are definitely cut candidates.
The other 2 that I'll throw out there for cut candidates are Robert Woods and Elijah Moore. I'll throw those names out there, and I'll let the Sammy Watkins slander slide. Kev, I know you're hurting right now with the Chiefs losing, so I think you're just using me to lash out. So it's all right. Let's wrap it up with the Week 10 tight end streamers. Going to go with Greg Dulcich. The Broncos get Tennessee in Week 10, like Kev was talking about, with Russell Wilson being a streaming candidate. Going into Week 9, the Titans have given up the 11th most fantasy points per game to tight ends, and they really haven't faced like anyone of note. Mo Alley Cox, I think, hit them pretty hard a couple weeks ago, 2 touchdowns and like 60 yards, something like that. But other than that, like Darren Waller, but he didn't have a big game. So just one of those weird things I think they can definitely be taken advantage of. Logan Thomas, you're looking at a Washington team that should be playing behind against Philly. It'll be the 3rd week back for Logan Thomas following his injury, so he should be nearing full strength and be more involved in that offense as well. Cole Kmet feels a little point chasey, but this one here is all about the matchup. Even outside the 2 tight ends that Kmet, 2 touchdowns rather that Kmet had today, still saw 6 targets, which was only behind Mooney. I think Chase Claypool also saw 6, and no one else on that team saw more than 2, I believe. Bears get the Lions, who going into Week 9, giving up the 7th most fantasy points per game to tight ends, and just have an awful defense all around, unless they're playing Aaron Rodgers, apparently. And then last one here, Kev, this is for you, buddy. But pay attention to Evan Ingram. He did miss a little bit of time in this game today with a back injury. So if he is out, it could be Dan Arnold time. Jags going to get the Chiefs, figure to be playing from behind, so it's going to open up a bunch of volume for all the Jacksonville pass catchers. So threw that one on there. Just pay attention to the Evan Ingram injury and see what ends up happening.
Dan air yards, Arnold, love to see it. Eventually time was going to come. But I don't think I noticed you had him on there, but I think Kate Otten is somebody else's that I would look at. He's only rostered 11% of ESPN leagues. Went 5 for 66 and a score today. So maybe this Bucs offense will at some point just be consistent and actually start putting up It has been such a weird year for all these offenses this year. I mean, a lot of teams like the Rams, the Bucks. I mean, so many of these offenses, the Packers that we thought would be better than what they were, the Raiders, the Broncos, like all these teams that we were expecting to be good have not been good at all. And so it's been kind of a weird year. So, but I would throw out Kate Otten. I think would also be a player that I would add as well. 566 in the score, today. So hopefully signs maybe this win will jumpstart this offense and kind of get this team going. So that's who I would have here. But I did see Slayer in the chat said Slayton seems like wide receiver one on the Giants. I think it goes back and forth between both of them. Like I don't mind Slayton either, and I probably could have put him on here. I kind of went back and forth of adding him to the list as well. I think he's a decent option. It's just I feel like at least with Wan'Dale Robinson, they're going to get a lot of manufacturer touches because they want to get him in space, do a lot of different things with him. Where I think Darius Slayton feels a little bit more touchdown dependent. He has been decent, especially over the last like 3 or 4 weeks, and they don't really have anybody else to throw the ball to. So I don't mind him as an option, but I don't think he started that like I'm like, oh, I definitely want to add him right now. Like he's like a solid option. Again, kind of the same list I would put them with some of these other guys that I have. Where if you're looking for a bye week fill in or something like that, I think Darius Slayton can get the job done.
Yeah, I agree. So that's going to wrap it up. We will have our rankings coming out here in the next, probably maybe potentially Tuesday. So I have to see if the schedules line up. Might have the rankings come out a day early. I will also have a defense and kicker streaming video that hopefully I will get out this week as well. But any questions, go ahead and join our Discord. You can also drop any questions here on the video. Make sure we get to them. Good luck the rest of the week, and we'll catch you all soon.